Hi everyone, I'm Jackie. Just to set the record straight, I work with Media Labs and we are the owner and operator of a few media companies. It's very confusing. Genius, the music knowledge company, as well as Imgur. So thank you for having me. I'm joined with Sean and Eli. I'd love for you both to introduce yourselves and we'll take it from there.
Great, I can start. Hi everyone, I'm Eli Rivkin. I'm heading up our growth strategy area under subscriber growth and media here at Max, formerly HBO Max. Yeah, where I'm from or what else?
No, that's perfect.
Okay, perfect.
Hey, Sean Boyle, I lead our media teams for brand, so Max brand, and then everything related to our original content, as well as what we'll be talking about today, which is our pay one theatricals, a lot of our acquired content, as well as our library.
We have a real dynamic duo here, and I learned so much getting to know both Eli and Sean. We do a lot of work with Max, but there's so much that goes into seeing things on the streaming platform that I just wasn't aware of, so I'm excited to get into it. To kick things off, so I'd love to do a little icebreaker. Can't not do an entertainment icebreaker, which is your favorite on-platform show, and then your favorite off-platform show, if you may.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Hard Knocks fan. Profile is the NFL, so that'll be coming for training camp. We launched in season, and we're expanding the franchise this year. So we'll be doing actually an off-season episode. So it's basically 3 segments that follow the players and the front office staff of some of the leading NFL teams. And then off-platform, I actually just finished Fallout, which is on Amazon. So I could give them a shout out, but it was a really well done piece of content. It's really hard to make adaptations of games. We know we did The Last of Us last year that did really well. And so, being able to take Fallout the game and transition it into what I consider pretty well done and watchable content, it was really great.
Awesome. So I think on platform it has to be Curb Your Enthusiasm. Final season. Wish there were more, but that's how the cookie crumbles here. And then off platform, I'm really loving Shogun on, is it Hulu, an FX show? It's amazing. It's like incredible. Yeah.
If anyone cares about mine, it's also her. I'm sad it's last season, but we've had a lot of Larry. Let's get into a little bit. Something I learned was that every theatrical release makes it to the Max platform, which I actually didn't know. I thought there was maybe some qualifiers to what would actually be considered stream-worthy, so to speak. But I'd love to talk a little bit about that process. Eli and Sean have a really symbiotic relationship when it comes to this process. Eli analyzing and really sort of diving into the data and the models. So Eli or Sean, let's kick it off together and talk a little bit about that analysis process when we think about a title. And then we can maybe just start to riff off that a little bit as it makes its way to Max.
100%. So where I fit into the equation is really looking at what the demand indicators are for a specific title. So the process starts, and I know Sean will get more into this, on the theatrical side. We look at box office, they have their own box office prediction model. We then can look at other signals on our end, such as Google search, Wikipedia search, teaser 1, trailer 2, etc., just to see how these things have performed historically. We then can dig into the models a bit and do analysis on curves for what we think the title will actually do on our platform by using comp titles to predict. We found that the closer we can get that pay one to the theatrical premiere, the better for us. I mean, that's what all of our data says, that with every day that you're moving that past the window, I think it's typically like 45 is the average, but it fluctuates depending on how well it does in box office. We have to, we lose out on subscribers. So I do a lot of work there. We then partner heavily with Sean. We'll pass it over to actually create the.
Just a quick question about that. Is the reason that you lose that audience, if you don't do it quickly after pay one, is because you get all of that branding and marketing sort of windfall from the theatrical release?
Yeah, so it definitely has to do with like the halo and the film kind of being in just the cultural zeitgeist, especially if it's one of our tentpoles like Barbie or June that went out just earlier this quarter or last quarter, excuse me. So in terms of tracking, like we are a demand gen organization, right? Like our core KPI that Eli and myself and a lot of our organization is graded on is actual subscribers. And so, a lot of the work that Eli does in terms of scoring and like trying to identify these titles that are going to actually be assets where we can put media spend behind and actually drive the funnel is really important. And at the end of the day, just because a film doesn't do well in box office, it isn't really indicative that it won't do on the platform. I think something that we're all kind of aware of is post-COVID consumer viewing habits have changed. I think a lot of you, right, we took a poll of the room, like you no longer have a linear subscription, you're on streaming, what you mentioned, all of our films now that do run in theaters come to our platform, and so some consumers are just anticipating that. So if box office is soft, it doesn't, again, mean that it's not going to be something that we lean into. So, the work that Eli does is really critical to actually start to grade which films we're going to want to lean into. And from there, when we actually start to build a media plan, we typically start 7 days out. So, one of the things is we don't want to cannibalize ourselves either within WBD. Like, we want the theatrical business to be strong because at the end of the day, we all roll up, to the same leadership and to one P&L. And so our marketing window is very small. And so when we put a trailer out, we're trying to capture not only the awareness that was generated with the theatrical run, but our messaging is now to tell people that this film is on Max and that they should be coming if they want to watch it for the first time or if they want to watch it for the second or third time, something like too.
And does it get quickly impacted if there's a cultural moment, right? So like Barbie, right? It's a really polarizing film. There is such a sort of windfall effect against all of the, all the spirit behind the film in Greta. Do you, make exceptions in that case?
Yeah, I'll actually let Eli talk. I mean, Barbie was a really interesting case study because we had all these strong signals that, of course it did really well in box office. People were dressing up with pink. And then when it came to the platform, we actually saw a couple days of softness, but, picked up. I'll let Eli talk about some of those signals.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We saw that with Barbie. It was just, gangbusters. We haven't seen that kind of success in a very long time. It was soft on platform. I mean, we have a symbiotic relationship with Warner Brothers, the studio. I think the problem we saw is that they really wanted to hold on. So their window extended in terms of theatrical. They extended out with all their distributors. Then you had an increase in the home end division, so them selling it on PVOD. And then it hit us. And so I think what was great, and it shows the way that we work together and the way that we market this on the platform, we're able to quickly assess this, figure out what was declining, how do we actually improve on this, and I think, you had some really good insights.
Yeah, tell us what happened.
So basically, what we learned is it came into the platform right around the holiday break. So, I think it was December 22nd, something like that. So obviously everyone's out of school, you're starting to make your travel plans, your butt's not on the couch, streaming, content, at night or, during the weekend. And so that was like one thing that we kind of didn't give a lot of credit to. So when it came to the platform, I'm like, the numbers are horrible, but it actually for us it was a lead-in moment to say, okay, we need to push a little bit more out. So we pivoted, based on the signals or stuff that you told us in terms of where we thought the demand was. We reworked our media plan, put out a lot more of what we call kind of above the line media in terms of awareness and some of our commercials. And what we saw is every 2-3 days, viewership and subscribers started to uptick, and all the way into January. And it actually, I think, became one of our top 5 or top 6 titles for driving subscribers.
Incredible. Big moment. So maybe we can just double click into that a little bit. It doesn't have to be around Barbie, but a little bit about what that go-to-market strategy looks like. We have the data, we think we know what will happen on streaming, but we're not quite sure. Subscribers and subscriber retention is the number one KPI at all times, but there has to be some other secondary and tertiary KPIs.
Oh, sure.
So how are you laddering into those, and talk to us about some of those tactics.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand no content is created equal. We have, I think we're biased, but some of the best original content that comes to the platform via the HBO brand, and then arguably, WB, any given year has some of the best theatrical releases. So, just from a starting point, we're really lucky that we get to work with that kind of wide diversity of genres and obviously the talent that's part of it. So for us, in terms of as we start to build a plan, this sounds kind of like table stakes for any marketer or media, it starts with audience. And you can look at our slate going back to December where we had Willy Wonka, we had The Color Purple, we had Aquaman, we had Barbie, and then earlier this year we had Dune. I mean, you could look at all 4 or 5 of those titles, and I mean, very different, kind of segmentation in terms of who we're going to target. So I mean, that's where we really start. And as Eli mentioned, like we have a pretty strong partnership and a handshake with WB, where just as they're getting out of their opening box office, they have a ton of data that we're able to mine. And again, like even though we need to protect their window in terms of people wanting to go to the theater and experience these films in theater, which they're they're made for, we understand that in 45, 60 days, potentially longer based on how well it's doing, that we do need to hand it off. And so they're running us through a lot of their audience segmentation, their demo, where is it actually popping, where is it underperforming. So that gives us then a starting point, or at least a baseline to say, okay, if this market underperformed in terms of theatrical attendance, it might actually be an opportunity. And we of course have a broad understanding of like where most of our subscribers come from, the areas that we need to grow into, which was the predication of like Max launch is we need to broaden our content offering and who we speak to. We need to hit middle America more. And so we use all those to start to help triangulate like who our audience is, and we look at what are the attributes and the profiles that make up their viewing habits, and then we build a plan to basically meet that need.
Yeah, quick follow-up, because I think you also had mentioned in addition to all of that other KPIs. So you're saying it's subscriber growth and retention. I think another one that we should mention, which we'll get to obviously later on in the discussion, is about like awareness for the platform itself. So while Theatrical's KPI is more about ticket sales, we have retention, acquisition, but also brand awareness. So I think we just, and Sean can talk to this more too, we just launched this Max Gets Movies brand campaign where we take a lot of the Pay 1 titles that we have on platforms, some new, some older, and we're trying to see, can we move the needle as it relates to brand awareness on the platform, which I think is interesting, just how that plays into this whole strategy.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was just thinking about that and thinking, like, how do we think about budgets, right? There are certain titles that are going to knock it out of the park. There are certain titles that are more nuanced and maybe speak to certain people, in which you decide in your audience segmentation. But there are certain titles that are going to be great for the brand as a whole, right? And that will just sort of like lift, right? The high tide lifts all boats. Like, this is a moment for Max to get more brand awareness. How do you treat that title? And is there any secret sauce to how you sort of leverage that title to make it work harder for you?
Yeah, so it goes back to my prior comment that not all content's created equal, and then where we start in terms of like the actual audience segmentation. So we're very disciplined to basically carve out any waste in our media. I mean, we are again a streaming org that is driving towards profitability. We need we're always focused on incrementality, and Eli can talk about a lot of our incrementality metrics that we actually are graded on. And so when we're looking at building a media plan, again, starting with a really disciplined definition around who our audience segment is, we actually have reach frequency models that then tell us, okay, if we want to raise awareness that this title is coming to Max, and on this date, we need to hit the consumer X amount of times, and so that enables us to actually back into our budgets. Like, so again, you take your total audience, prospect and audience size, layer in optimal reach frequency, outputs, total impressions, and then you could bake in an average CPM or CPM by channel, which we are able then to get a budget. And the interesting thing is we're an agile organization. We do not set a budget and just let it run. Like, we are constantly, sometimes by the hour, if not day, looking at the performance of a title, all the way from early demand signals when we release a teaser or trailer, all the way to like when the media is live and when it's on platform. And if we see strength in performance, we'll pour money in. If we see obviously that it's declining or the decay curve is sharpening to the downslope, then we'll actually pull money out. So it's constantly just evaluating that, but in terms of budgeting, it's being very, very disciplined in terms of who your target audience is, not overshooting it, not going too broad, and then making sure you're backing into optimizations.
So as you're starting to think about what those media plans look like, or just what that go-to-market looks like, you have the data, you're starting to consider publisher analysis. Who do you go after? Ideas can come from everywhere. Can you give us a peek around, what works? Are you leaning into creators and influencers? Are you leaning into content creation in certain instances? That's sort of where we have had some success. Is it just reach and frequency?
I feel like you're setting me
I
up to
am.
get how right after this.
It's
I'm about to give you guys the blueprint. So we are partner agnostic, simply because what I just mentioned, right? Like consumer behavior has shifted. You're arguably, I'd say, the past 10 years, let alone COVID and the past couple years. So we don't hone in on necessarily any specific partner. Of course, there are our global partners like most of the social platforms that give us large reach and scale, and we can continually run there at kind of a CPA or some efficiency cap, kind of evergreen. But in terms of like when we build and when we plan the RFP partners, again, it is kind of a one-to-one to that plan. What we're looking for are a few things. So here's the blueprint. Does your tech stack, basically enable for the ingestion of our pixel? Like going back to like we are a highly attributable business. We are disciplined in our investment approach and understand if we're putting $1 out, we're going to get back for it, and kind of holding our partners to that. So that trackability is really important. And do you have the audience that we're looking for? Again, we are going to kind of in the RFP process, really ask you guys to answer questions in terms of who your audience is. What is their behavior? What is the incrementality in terms of like the daily or the monthly hits?
And that's not so much about, it's not only about an entertainment enthusiast, it's about the subject that we're talking about, it's about the context, right, the nuance around the release.
Yeah, because again, you could be a Dune entertainment enthusiast, but you could also be a Hacks entertainment enthusiast, and those aren't mutually exclusive, right? You're two very different consumers. And so when we're building a plan, for the Dune title coming to the platform, we want to know of, the population on your site or in your tool or, what have you, who are they? And are they actually incremental to if I could reach them somewhere else? So the third pillar of that is incrementality. And I'll let Eli talk a lot about the incrementality metrics, but, again, if you come to us and say, oh, we only have this person, like, we just know that that's not true. And so again, as we think about our reach frequency curves, like we understand that we have to have multiple touch points across multiple partners and kind of like their day. And so evaluating like, how that partner brings that to the plan.
Yeah, a lot of the modeling work, I mean, I don't know if this is the same vein of what you were thinking, Sean, but a lot of it is to help us understand what titles we think are going to drive the most incrementality from a planning perspective, but then also when we're doing a look back to see how successful was the campaign across all of the different touch points, we can actually take a bird's eye view and say, okay, this is how incremental this was to our business as usual BAU campaigns, but also how incremental this specific title was if it's a single title campaign. So we work literally hand in hand. We work with the data science team to set benchmarks to measure success, and then that's ultimately what we're measured against with the partners. So, all the names keep changing.
So like one of the key ones is is cost per incremental gross ad, and it really is a measure of the last 10% of the subscribers that actually come into a campaign, because that is the least efficient. So how efficient can we make that least efficient subscriber? So that is a core metric in terms of like actual proving out your incrementality, is like understanding like if you're driving traffic and subscribers to us, like we're able to look at it kind of at that finite level, and that helps us understand the value in terms of what you're driving to the overall campaign.
Great. All right, we'll get off the subject for a minute.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Streaming is relatively new, in the grand scheme of entertainment and media. It's also moving at an incredible pace. There are a lot of key learnings. There's a lot of sort of missteps, but there's also a lot of really big wins. I think it's always interesting to hear about both sides of those things, especially for an audience that maybe doesn't understand that part of the business. Talk to us about what have been some of these learnings as you're thinking about Max? I don't know, a step to the left was too far, you had to recover, or, and then let's talk about maybe a really big win where you're like, wow, we should do more of this.
Yeah, when I'm looking at the campaigns, and I can use titles just to ground us a little bit. When you're looking at something like The Last of Us, where we noticed early on that there was a huge Latinx, Hispanic lean towards the audiences that we're observing, and we got a lot of that demographic data. And we also, had HBO Max in Latin America. And so I think a potential miss was us not necessarily working as closely as we could to ensure that we were able to capitalize on the over-index of the specific audience. So that was a learning that we had. We immediately were able to correct and do a lot of tests to see like what publishers can we work with, what, is there anything we can do on the media side to increase for that specific title. So I think that was, it was a gangbusters hit. So there's no issues there. It's just like probably a learning that we took into consideration moving forward.
Sean, anything on your side to add to that?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of a macro view. Obviously, you mentioned, I mentioned Max, formerly HBO Max, and so that was a big transition for us last year. And so we went into market with a brand campaign June of last year, with the new branding, kind of our total value proposition in terms of what the service was. And so, and this is really on the heels, of why the merger between Discovery and Warner Media happened. Was, we have this great brand, arguably again, some of the best branding in TV and HBO. But with that, kind of came, not a stigma, but there was an association, right? HBO wasn't known for easy lean back content. We were appointment viewing Sunday night at 9, House of the Dragon, Sopranos. Don't miss it because then you're going to be the one at the water cooler in the office on Monday, not knowing what happened. And so, that was our core, if you will. And so, when we went to Max, it was really about broadening out, not only our content offering, but who, should consider us as a streaming service, especially as consolidation's happening. Everyone went from no streaming services to all of a sudden 10 or 20, and of course, the natural correction there is, you're gonna, cut kind of some of the ones that you don't use out. And so we really had to kind of tell people why Max, why is Max one you should keep as prices are going up. And obviously, all streamers are, kind of having the same type of content. They have their prestige dramas, they have their lean back and salacious reality stuff. And so I think the learning for us was just generally entering that market with that messaging is we had to be very nimble. Consumers' reaction to our media, what we saw in terms of a lot of our brand health metrics, which Eli tracks diligently and reports out to us in terms of aided awareness, unaided awareness, intent to subscribe, content linkage, between what we're promoting in the market with their content, and are they actually correctly associating that with Max? And that became even more complicated as we understood the marketplace also necessitated us to be a seller of content. And so if you're a Netflix subscriber, you probably saw HBO content on Netflix, and you still do. And so, really trying to navigate that minefield of consumers' perceptions of the brand, and then kind of back to how do we leverage media and creative to tell that story, and obviously lift those indicators in a positive direction.
And one of the challenges of consumers, I know what I watch, but sometimes I'm not watching it, to make sure that brand recognition is there. How about our breakout success? I feel like there's amazing titles, but maybe to ground us, to use Eli's term, obviously The Color Purple was really big. Any breakout success, maybe through the lens of the title.
I mean, there's been so many successes. I think everyone can say that. I think House of the Dragon was just a roaring success of Dragon's Roar. I don't really know what sounded it, but that was absolutely incredible. And I think we talked the last Brand Innovators event that we had specifically about some of the organic moments that happened that then Sean and team and the media side was able to really pounce on. That one interview between the two, I forgot their names, the two people. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I think that was cool too. So not only did we spend a lot of media, not only was that media super efficient, not only was that cost per incremental gross ad, the efficiency on that last 10% super efficient, but we were able to really lean into organic moments in a positive way.
House of Dragon Season 2 coming out June 16th. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. We actually saw a pretty interesting thing just happen. So we have obviously all our networks, Discovery, TNT, TBS, ID, TLC, etc. And again, most of the content that we lean into is our HBO and Max originals, as well as our pay ones or theatrical films. But we got kind of surprised, which doesn't happen to us a lot. We think we're pretty proactive and understand what our content offering is. But a couple weeks ago, you guys might have saw on TikTok and then kind of caught the win. But we had a little mini series come out called Quiet on Set, and it was from our network ID partners. It's something they produce. It ran concurrently on ID as well as Max. Wasn't even on our radar of something that was coming on the platform, but it, I mean, just took off, right? So if you haven't seen it or haven't heard about it, it basically profiles some of the misbehaviors of Nickelodeon, in the early days, in which some of us are in our 30s and 40s, remember kind of like Nickelodeon at the time was really big, and so for whatever reason, I mean, it just caught a tailwind, and over the weekend and then the Monday, I mean, just vaulted up to our what we call our top first view. So it is the thing that people are coming in and subscribing, and it is the first thing that they are watching when they come on platform, and it stayed there elevated for probably well over a week and a half. And so we didn't have any media behind this. We had some like social engagement in our teams rally, but like we saw these metric kind of like uptick over the weekend. We came on Monday and we're like, oh shit, we have to do something. So we spun up creative really quick. We built a media plan to basically add some fuel to the fire. And again, I think it's ended up in like the top 10 of like content as measured by first views since I think Max and probably HBO Max for like the 2 years. So I would think that's a key win not only for our organization, but just for all the different teams that had to pivot and make that a reality.
It was also a very big topic of conversation at our dinner last night.
Yes.
We had client dinner, and we talked about it for half a night.
Yeah. It's a really good.
It's a really big zeitgeist.
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting when the layers can get pulled back and you truly understand some of these things. And that's as unfortunate as some of the situations are. It's at least educational and definitely teaches you something.
I'm getting the 5-minute mark, maybe it's 3 now. So I think we should open up to a question or two because 2 amazing panelists here. So if anyone has a question, we'd love to hear them. James?
So I watched James Spear from Penske Media. I watched The Wire kind of out of sequence, and I was following it on Reddit to like replicate that water cooler experience. Given the fact, again, I wasn't like having any much experiences of that. Are you doing anything to kind of like replicate that water cooler experience, like in the virtual or social world?
I mean, yes. I mean, we definitely, like I said, we want to tap into conversations that are happening and try to amplify those. Obviously, I think it's very dependent on the situation and the piece of content. So, in terms of like kind of like community moderation or like adding kind of media to help expand positive conversation that's going on. Yeah, we're always looking at those opportunities across partners, and a lot of our good partners, and even the ones if we're not working with you, they reach out to us, especially if they're seeing something on their platform within their community, and we evaluate those on a case-by-case basis.
I bet it's also really fandom, right? It's really driven by fandom. So that's also really
I have a question.
Yes, Rachel.
So, as somebody who was very much part of the old HBO Sunday night appointment, Sopranos and everything after, part of the obsession of the brand, and hearing you guys talk about it now, and obviously living in LA, so we see the assets all around us, but it feels like Warner's kind of like running the release like big branding, and as it starts to move into the funnel and getting to the streaming part, I'm hearing a lot more sort of like ROI, direct leading the conversation. Is there a sweet spot in the middle that serves all the masters, like, IRL, experiential, out of home, sort of all of the rest of the stuff that exists in the world and culture around us?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So I can speak specific to like our, part of the business in terms of like we believe in the funnel in terms of, awareness, intent, and then subscribe. So brand content performance, if you look at it from there. And then, within that is like all the different like fringe activations of like, tapping into community or subcultures. We work very closely with our actual marketing partners. So we have an original marketing team and a brand marketing team, and their job is really to like bring the creative to life. And then IRL on the ground activations really lives within their realm of like production. And then we try to expand that message or that moment with media. So, we're constantly looking for media moments to, kind of insert the brand into. And if one doesn't exist, like, we're lucky enough that we have, on the ground activations. Like, I don't know if anyone went to Coachella this past weekend, but, we were there activating, a couple of DJs that we remixed the House of the Dragon Game of Thrones intro song, and there's going to be some extension and tangential ways that content is used as we lead up into our marketing campaign. So it all fits. Our remit is, again, going out, if I put $1 out, I need to know what it returns. That's not to say a brand is a performance channel, but it all fits together when we look at it in aggregate.
Sorry.
I love how you talked about partner agnostic and incrementality. How do you evaluate new partners? And is it like certain meaty parts of your campaigns or certain campaigns test new partners? Is it the 8, 70, 20, 10 rule, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty rigorous testing framework. I think as it comes to testing new partners, it is on a case-by-case basis. So I'll regret saying this, but like most of the time, it is like just understanding what partners are out there. So cold email sometimes works. Like I definitely respond to those. I know you like that, so send me stuff. Events like these, definitely get you introduced to new brands. And so it goes back to like just because you're a new partner doesn't mean it's a guaranteed test. Like we're going to do a pretty thorough evaluation of who your audience is. If you have a clean room, we're going to set up a data share agreement. We're going to push our 1PD audience segment in there and look at like true match rates in terms of like how incremental is the audience to our base. And there's a whole thing, but yeah, it's mostly like let's talk. Understand what you guys kind of bring to the table, and if there's an opportunity that we can look at it, you definitely will. I mean, it's today, it may be next year, but we're always looking for new partners because it's the only true way to get to like incremental reach is like you have to kind of expand your scope of who you're working with.
No, we're done. We're done.
Oh, we're done. Okay, because I came to data question. Thanks, guys.